Otto von Bismarck observed that laws are like sausage. It's better not to see them made. That certainly applies to the stampede of new housing legislation. In the Housing and the Planning and Development Committees in the 2024 session of the Connecticut General Assembly, the Planning and Development Committee's discussion of HB 5390, an act concerning transit-oriented communities, at their meeting on March 15, 2024 is symptomatic. It is clear some members of the committee were kept in the dark about revisions in the substitute bill.
And welcome to the Planning and Development Committee meeting for Friday, March 15th. Item number 12, HB number 5390, LCO number 2536. This is a JFS. Did I skip something? Okay. Sorry, an act concerning transit-oriented communities. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Who'd like to begin? Senator Fazio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I mean, we're getting substitute language on the legislation a little bit late, so I was wondering if I could ask either of the chairs if they could summarize some of the changes to the legislation before I go. I want to make sure that you know, if I'm the different parts I'm commenting on, I am commenting on correctly.
Am happy to. Also, I apologize that 3 p.m. was late yesterday. At 5390, just to give you an idea on the JFS, it makes substantial revisions to the RAISE bill, including the removal of brownfield remediation programs from the definition of discretionary infrastructure funding. There's a substitution of the Secretary of OPM or their designee for the ORG coordinator in most instances. Clarification that discretionary infrastructure funding is available on a priority basis to qualifying transit-oriented communities, and that non-transit-oriented communities are not ineligible for such funding by operation of this bill. Clarification that the legislative body of the municipality must adopt resolutions concerning qualification as a transit-oriented community. Modification of the provision which would have allowed a developer to contribute to a municipal fund in exchange for as-of-right developmental rights. Developers can now contribute to such fund in lieu of granting affordable deed restrictions. And clarification that municipalities rather than transit-oriented districts receive priority funding if such district is located in a priority funding area as set forth in the Plan of Conservation and Development. Does that help?
It does. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think that is useful for us as we vote on and discuss the below legislation, which will probably be the most controversial and significant bill that we vote on today. I think we all agree on a couple of different things across party lines, across this committee and this body, which is that first, when we put local communities in the driver's seat with regard to governing their towns and cities, that we get the best results. And second, that we also need to create housing and development policies in this state which create more affordability and which help create economic growth. I have a couple of concerns about this bill in general. First, that I think it's overly prescriptive in what it recommends for quote-unquote transit-oriented communities. It basically, in order to meet the definition of a transit-oriented community, it would require that towns allow as-of-right development within those transit-oriented communities up to 9 units, and above 9 units if there's 30% deed restricted within the development. So it's very, very expansive and permissive in what type of development it allows in a transit-oriented community, irrespective of what that transit-oriented community looks like and is suited for. Namely, is this a very, very major transit hub, or is it a small train station or a small bus station? I could think of train stations and bus stations in my district that are entirely residential, that don't have any mixed use. So you don't have retail and other necessities that actually lend itself to a true walkable, bikeable community. And yet we would be prioritizing or deprioritizing funding to local communities based on that. I think that if this section, what qualifies as a transit-oriented community, was pared down, if it promoted maybe middle housing, but didn't allow as of right up to 9 units completely, and simple small deed restriction for as of right development above 10 units, I think it would be more reasonable. It would be more palatable to people on the committee. But I think one of the other big problems is how it prioritizes or deprioritizes very, very large quantities of monies to districts based on whether they acquiesce to these zoning rules. It is certainly an improvement, and I appreciate the amendments made by the substitute language made by the leadership of the committee, taking out brownfield monies from this bill. However, the Urban Act bonds are a very, very large swath of discretionary funding that has been given to any number of communities, towns, and cities across the state. Last year, this body put $200 million into Urban Act funds, and it was used in a highly important but discretionary manner to award different towns and cities for various capital projects across the state. Most likely, this body will continue to replenish hundreds of millions of dollars into that funding stream. And if towns and cities are prioritized or deprioritized from that funding stream of hundreds of millions of dollars based on acquiescing to this transit-oriented communities rules, as of right development up to 9 units and virtually as of right development beyond 10 units, then I'm concerned it's almost as good as a mandate. If that monies is prioritized or deprioritized in a very assertive or aggressive way. Of course, we're yielding a lot of discretion to the administration on this, and we don't necessarily have a check on that as a legislature after we pass this legislation. So I think prioritizing or deprioritizing hundreds of millions of dollars of discretionary funding from communities based on whether they allow almost entirely as of right development in their transit-oriented communities around train or bus stations is a bridge too far for many people on this committee, and I think you'll see many no votes because of that. Again, I appreciate that we need to do something with regard to improving the availability and affordability of housing. Every year I put forward, I think, 3 or 4 comprehensive bills with actually Democratic colleagues in order to advance those goals. I know that there has been legislation before this committee sponsored, introduced, co-sponsored by members of this committee on my side of the aisle, which have sought to achieve that goal, and I think other members will discuss that further. So I believe there are alternatives. I think there are good alternatives. And I think even the good chair's proposal this term to create housing points to encourage towns and cities to do more development in certain circumstances and giving them housing points under state statute 830G for those efforts is a superior concept to this bill, Work, Live, Ride. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and it's not just a matter of voting this bill up or down. It's the fact that we have any number of alternatives in order to achieve those 2 goals in this state. And because the zoning is overly permissive in what it calls for under this Work, Live, Ride bill, the transit-oriented communities, and because there is so much funding, hundreds of millions of dollars of funding potentially, that can be deprioritized from towns that don't acquiesce to this rule that we make up here, I'm going to be a no vote on this. I'm always willing to have the conversation. I'm always willing to come together with friends on both sides of the aisle to try to forge a compromise, forge legislation that can create more affordability while also respecting the local control and home rule in this state. Unfortunately, this bill doesn't do that. So that's where I stand currently. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time.
Thank you so much. Any further discussion? Representative Dubitsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make sure I understand the S language. I know that you went through a quick summary of it, but am I correct that a town needs to decide, essentially opt in to the provisions of this bill?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, and if you also mentioned that a developer can pay into a fund instead of putting a deed restriction on new units, is that right?
So it's a modification of the provision which would have allowed the developer to contribute to a municipal fund in exchange for as-of-right development rights. They now can contribute to such a fund in lieu of granting affordable deed restrictions.
Okay, so if a developer builds a development and has, let's say they build 10 units, and normally 3 of those would be affordable housing that have deed restrictions on them. In lieu of that, they can build 10 market rate units and pay into a fund. Is that correct?
That is my understanding of this.
Okay, and where is that fund held, and what is that money used for?
I actually am going to ask for a clarification on LCO for that piece.
So in the substitute language, LCO 2536, this is all, this provision is in subsection I of section 2. The fund would be established by the municipality, and the proceeds from the fund could only be utilized for the development of affordable housing in the municipality.
Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Representative Zullo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to start out, as I have in the past so often, thanking those that desegregate for the changes that in this bill over the years. You know, this bill has evolved significantly from where it started in a lot of respects. And that has a lot to do with the input that I know that they have received and that the public has voiced in response to the proposal as it's come up year after year. Do I love every provision of it? Certainly I don't. But do I respect the fact that it has evolved, and it has evolved in response to our collaboration? I certainly respect and appreciate that. I'm going to echo some of the sentiments of my colleagues. Firstly, I have a serious concern about what my colleague just brought up, the fact that this development can proceed and essentially result in the creation of 0 affordable housing units with a simple donation to a town-created fund. You know, we do this right now with open space, right? You're allowed to create a development, build housing, and then rather than have open space, to put money into a fund locally. And unfortunately, there's a lot of cons in all respects from that. You know, developers don't like it. They feel like they're being essentially hit up by municipalities for this money. It doesn't really create a lot of open space because there aren't always a lot of opportunities to acquire open space with the use of these funds. But if the goal of this proposal is truly to create affordable housing opportunities, I think this provision significantly undermines it, because it really does incentivize developers looking at it from just a dollars and cents perspective and saying, is it going to be economically efficient for me to make this payment to avoid having to sell subsidized units? And it's just going to come down to dollars and cents. If the market's going to bear enough, they're going to do it every single time. And because of that, it's going to result in the creation of less affordable housing. I think that significantly undermines the intent and the purpose of the bill. On the other hand, and my other colleague alluded to this a little bit, I thought we had a really exceptional proposal in this committee this year relating to the housing growth rating system that would have awarded municipalities points that ultimately could have allowed municipalities to escape from under the daunting shadow of 8-30G. And there were concerns voiced about that proposal, saying that there was no guarantee that that proposal was going to create more affordable housing. Well, as I sit here looking at that provision of this bill, that I just referenced, I see no guarantee that this is going to create any more affordable housing. I also see no guarantee that this is going to help municipalities identify places, opportunities for affordable housing, create affordable housing, or meet the requirements of 8-30G. On the other hand, we had a proposal that was really creative, that really got at helping municipalities, incentivizing them complying with 8-30G, and ultimately rewarding them if they took a lot of measures that a lot would take voluntarily if there was a carrot, right? If there was an incentive, something that really gave meaning to what they were doing. I'd like to see the evolution of this bill and other proposals that we have pursue that path. I think that is the path that ultimately helps address the housing shortage and the housing needs in our state. For those reasons, I'm going to be opposing the bill today, but I do hope we can continue that conversation on how to incentivize housing and incentivize towns to create affordable housing, because we certainly have a shortage, and it's certainly something we need to address in the immediate future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I would just respond that the fund is an option for the towns. It's not a requirement, but it's a tool that they could potentially use to, further their desires. So leading to that local authority. Any further discussion? Oh, Representative McCarthy Vahey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's nice to see all of you there in the room. I'm grateful for our virtual option as we prepare to celebrate St. Patrick's Day here in the greater Bridgeport region. Madam Chair, and to all those from the ranking members and committee members, as well as those that desegregate, I'm incredibly grateful for the evolution of this conversation, which has been going on for many years as we struggle to meet the needs of the residents of Connecticut, as we talked about at the beginning of this hearing. And I really just want to speak in support of moving this bill and this conversation forward. I think that it's difficult to have some of these conversations, and has been, as we have had some very lively debates and discussions over the years in planning and development, which I so appreciate. The thing that's so striking about the work that has been done on this bill is the work to bring along different groups who, when we first started talking about these concepts, were purportedly not in favor. Groups like the League of Conservation Voters and others, as we look at the environmental impacts next to the need for housing and so many other needs that seem to be competing. But I think this bill goes a long way towards bringing some of those together. I just am also mindful of the fact that certainly the use of state funds is understandably the concern about assuring that our communities are getting what they need. Equal concern to me is that we as a state are prioritizing what's most important, which certainly housing and assuring that people have a safe and secure and affordable place to live is high on that hierarchy of needs. So, Madam Chair, to you and your co-chair, to the ranking members, thank you for the ongoing conversations, and I look forward to us continuing to move this bill forward.
Thank you, Representative. Any Representative Dubitsky for the second time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Another couple of questions that I neglected in my first time around. Are there any provisions in this bill to afford anybody, whether it be a state government, nonprofit, or religious organization, any type of as-of-right powers to build housing without following the town zoning regulations?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. And that's whether or not there is a transit-oriented district.
Yes, I believe that there is not that in this bill, no.
Okay. All right. Is there any, I have a note about ADUs. ADU is, I can't even know. Accessory dwelling unit, right. Accessory apartments. Is there a provision about them being sold as separate parcels?
I don't believe so, but I am going to defer to LCO on this one,
Okay.
just to confirm. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. It's not in the bill, to my knowledge.
It's not, okay. All right, thank you. And just, I am still going through the bill and still confirming what is and is not. I certainly appreciate the progress that this bill has made, but for today, I'm going to be voting against it, and perhaps once I've seen the S language and have gone through it all, perhaps, you know, this may be the solution we've been looking for, but at this point, I can't really tell. So I'll be voting against it today.
Okay, thank you so much, Representative. I just want to sort of comment on or add on to some of the comments that our Representative McCarthy-Vahey made. I think that it's really challenging for us, and certainly on both sides of the aisle. I think we find the current pressing need of affordable housing in general, incredibly challenging. I look at our homeless numbers. I look at the fact that we have over 1,000 people sleeping outside and 4,000 people in shelter, and we know that they are not moving out of shelter fast enough because they have nowhere to go. And so I think this legislation specifically, as many people have said, whether they're voting for or against, it does represent a giant move forward, because I think that frequently in this building we set goalposts and then we move them, and then we set new goalposts and then we move them again. And I think that this bill has really seen a lot of that goalpost moving. And so I think that this bill represents a more nimble approach to these transit-oriented communities. It doesn't cover the entire state. It allows for pieces of local authority that people really are interested in, but it would get us to actually building. And I think that that's probably the biggest issue we have, is that we continue to not actually build. And while I utterly respect the parts of our state that are not interested in building, the parts of our state that are, we need to do, I think, everything we can to encourage that. And I think that this bill does that. I believe Senator Rahman also has some comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank to the Disaggregate Connecticut working hard for our community, not just the housing issue, so many other aspects. Thank you for your hard work and dedication and loyalty for our community. And with that also, I want to thank them working many, many years on this bill with different chair before we even took over. And working with our ranking members and all the committee members, all the JFS continue progress. And with that, I want to thanks to my co-chair also and LCO. One item we change over and over, but then we coming back square one. Even though so many years we putting the hard work, everyone. So this is the reason today, I think this bill will creating the more housing. I know there is in this world nothing 100% guarantee we can get, but we can help to work progress. I think this bill will create and help the housing shortage. Previously, I actually mentioned a number of times, not just housing shortage, trans-oriented housing. We have the housing shortage every single sector, but at least this bill will take care of the transit-oriented and workforce housing, desperate need, which is also tied up with our economy, because when someone can't find the housing walking distance or the transit-oriented area, our business owner also struggling to hiring the employee, running the business. So many reasons I want to support this bill today for work progress. Thank you for your hard work. Thanks.
Thank you
Madam
much,
Chair.
Senator. Thank you so much, Senator. Seeing no other comments sorry, Representative Hall?
Just along the lines of Rep. Dubitsky's concerns. So we have notes on our bills here that reference the development for if a state-owned property is vacant or a nonprofit or religious organization, as of right, they could come in and develop it. It's a concern. If it's not in there, I'm great. But we have vacant prisons in our district, and they're looking at doing something with those right now. So I'm going to take the chair at her word, but I do want to go through the S language. It's a huge issue for us there. And for example, in Enfield, we have a beautiful transit-oriented development going on. We developed it years ago. We're building on it. We have the train stop coming. We're really excited about it. We've done a lot in our town towards transit-oriented development. We actually have a developer looking at vacant lots that the town has pulled down, old buildings that have sat there for years, to open up for housing. So we have a beautiful project that was in front of the town council. They wanted to see more of a mixed use in the building. Unfortunately, the developer came in with all housing. So I want to be able to keep what our towns kind of see as the vision for developing these transit-oriented developments, and I want to make sure that we leave it with the town. I love the idea of the carrots that the good chair has promoted, especially for towns that really work towards these developments and have a vision for them. So I'm going to be a no today. I could be a yes if some of my questions are answered here, so I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
As far as I know, that is not in the bill. I'm just going to reiterate that. And I looked over to LCO one more time because they had a little more time to review. So as far as we can tell, it's not. But that, certainly happy to go through the language after the fact. And I would also say that if we want to have a meeting after the fact, because as we know, these bills are always a work in progress, even when they leave committee, happy to organize a meeting so that people on the committee can, speak more to or be able to ask more questions about it, I guess is where we're at. So Representative Zalestowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to express my appreciation for everybody who's worked very hard on this issue for a very long time. This bill is a long way from what we saw in 2015, which involved eminent domain for properties within a half mile of a transit station. This is a big improvement, and it's due to a lot of hard work from everybody involved, and I do appreciate that. I still have some concerns that I may be able to get resolved. I'll be a no today on this, but I think it's a huge difference from the hammer approach that was taken a number of years ago. So thank you for your work on this as well, Madam Chair.
And I just want to say to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, I really appreciate when we get feedback on bills like this. I think you know that. We certainly have had a whole lot of conversations about that. And it's nice to hear the openness to the idea, even if you're voting no today, that you're open to ongoing discussions after the fact. We really do appreciate that. Representative Delnicki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I've heard a lot of discussion here, and quite frankly, I have concerns when I haven't had an opportunity to see the actual JFS language, which I'm hearing from a number of colleagues here. They share the same concern. Specifically, though, I want to ask a question pertaining to inland wetlands conservation commissioners and the projects themselves. And my understanding is there would be involvement, but many a time a conservation commission wetlands agent will take a look at a property and say, you just can't do it here. Is there going to be any provision? And I just want to offer the fact that if you don't have the answer, this is fine. Is there going to be any provision there that would short-circuit in any fashion the actions by a conservation commission or an inland wetlands agent or an inland wetlands commissioners if they were to take and make a ruling based on hydrology, based on fines, based on endangered plants and insects? Because we've had that as a big issue in my community. The tiger beetle specifically, that we went through a tremendous expense to move tiger beetles just so that a project could occur. So is there anything in the JFS language that addresses anything pertaining to situations like that?
I'm going to defer to LCO because of the specificity of that, but I do have a follow-up.
So nothing in the proposed substitute language modifies any of the provisions that deal with any inland wetlands agencies. So nothing has changed from the underlying bill in the S language. There are provisions in here that specify that the zoning commission does have to consult with certain inland wetland agencies in determining the boundaries of a transit-oriented district. There's nothing in the language that explicitly gives a wetlands agency or other member of such commission the right to overrule or short-circuit any decisions of the zoning commission.
And I would also add that this is also part of the listening and the learning and the moving forward with a bill that makes sense. In fact, the League of Conservation Voters, while they did not come in person to testify, they actually testified in support of this bill because they felt comfortable that it was not going to in any way impinge on conservation efforts, et cetera. And I hear you're on the beetle. We have a spotted newt. So same thing, different district.
And for the record, I started my, for lack of a better term, political career as an inland wetlands commissioner, conservation commissioner, and served for 3 years in that capacity. I share the same concern, though, that I've heard about. This is new language. We haven't had a chance to look it over. And my vote today does not dictate what my vote would be if this were to come onto the floor. Again, I will be joining my colleagues in voting no, but wanting to continue the discussion and actually utilize the phrase trust but verify, just to see the final language that we're going to be dealing with, so that I have a comfort level and I can go back and have a comfort level with my constituents and my colleagues that do serve on inland wetland agencies and conservation commissions. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your hard work on this, and I look forward to seeing how this evolves.
And thank you so much. And I know that we are all incredibly busy, but in fairness to the hard work of our LCOs and our clerk, the JFS language was sent out yesterday at 3 p.m. at the same time to both sides of the aisle. I just think that's only fair to say because they've worked so hard to get it out as early as they could. I know some committees didn't get theirs till right before their committee met. So I'm very grateful to them. Seeing no further discussion at this time, I think we've had everyone. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
A motion has been made and seconded to JFS HB 5390, LCO 2536. Kavros DeGraw.
Kavros DeGraw votes yes.
Rahman.
Senator Rahman votes yes.
Zullo.
Rob Zullo votes no.
Fazio.
Fazio votes no.
Chafee.
Yes.
Needleman. Hockadell. Lopes. Wan. Baker. Representative Baker.
Representative Baker votes yes.
Baumgardner. Conley. DiAgostino. Lamar. McCarthy Vahey.
McCarthy Vahey votes yes.
Michelle. Delnicki.
No.
Dubitsky.
No.
Haynes. Hall.
Hall votes no.
Zawistowski. Representative Baumgardner, would you like to vote?
Yes. And yes.
Madam Clerk, Representative Conley's also joined us.
Representative Conley.
Representative Conley votes yes.
Okay, I think that's everyone for that one. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk.
To stay abreast of housing, zoning, and 8-30G bills in Hartford, please visit our website at ct169strong.org. A link is provided in the description to this video. Please support our efforts on behalf of your neighborhood and to preserve local control of zoning. Thank you.